For most of her life, Sister Marianne Delacroix was known as a woman of unwavering faith. Born in a small village in southern France, she grew up under the watchful eyes of her devout Catholic parents. Her earliest memories were filled with the scent of incense, the echo of Latin prayers, and the quiet comfort of the chapel where her mother would kneel in tears after every Sunday Mass. By the age of 21, while many of her friends were exploring the world, Marianne made a choice most couldn't understand. She joined a convent. The Order of the Sacred Light, a secluded and strict community, took her in. There were no televisions, no phones, no distractions, just prayer, service, and obedience. She gave up her name, her past, and any claim to the outside world. She was now Sister Marianne. For 4 decades, she served as the convent's spiritual advisor, teaching young novices, tending to the garden, and rising every morning at 4 a.m. for lauds. Her life was structured, disciplined, and empty of sin. At least, that's what she believed. She never questioned the rules, never doubted the teachings. If a thought ever came that disturbed her, she'd silence it with a rosary. If a dream seemed too real, too dark, she'd fast until it faded. But beneath the silence of the convent walls, Marianne carried something unspoken, a guilt she never confessed, a fear she never shared. And on April 9th, 2021, in the early hours of the morning, Sister Marianne collapsed in the chapel. Her body lay still on the cold stone floor. The other sisters found her with her eyes wide open, lips parted as if she was about to scream. They thought she had passed peacefully. They were wrong, because Marianne was not dead, not yet. And what she saw in those minutes was something no soul is ever meant to see. The moment her heart stopped, Marianne felt nothing. No pain, no fear, just silence. She found herself floating, or falling, in a vast colorless void. There was no light, no up or down. Time seemed to vanish. She wasn't sure if she was moving or if the darkness itself was alive, pulsing around her like a breathing lung. Then came the cold. Not like winter, not like snow, but a deep, spiritual cold, like her very soul was being stripped naked in front of something ancient and merciless. Suddenly, a whisper broke the silence. Not with words, but with presence. She wasn't alone. Figures began to emerge from the dark, but they weren't human, at least not anymore. Twisted shapes with faces like melted wax, eyes sunken into pits of endless grief. They reached for her, not to comfort, but to accuse. You wore his name, but not his truth. You hid behind prayers, but your heart was hollow. You served the church, but not God. Each voice was like a dagger, not aimed at her body, but her memory. Suddenly, she remembered everything she tried to forget. The time she ignored a young novice crying alone in the courtyard, too embarrassed to ask what was wrong. The moments she judged the poor who came to the gate, thinking to herself, they should work harder. The secret resentment she held against another nun who rose to leadership before her. And worst of all, the child she failed to protect, decades ago, when she saw something she shouldn't have ignored, and walked away. Marianne fell to her knees, sobbing, screaming, trying to recite the Lord's Prayer. But the words wouldn't come. It was as if her lips had been stitched shut by truth. Then she heard it, a scream, high-pitched, endless, terrifying. It wasn't hers. It came from everywhere, from the ground beneath her, from the air, from the very walls of this place, if it even had walls. And that's when she saw it. The ground cracked open beneath her, and a river of fire poured out. Souls floated inside, not burning like flesh, but weeping like children, screaming for mercy, forgiveness, a second chance. And above them, towering like a mountain of agony, stood a figure, not with horns, not red, not the devil she had imagined from childhood stories. This figure was beautiful, blindingly beautiful, cloaked in robes of gold and light, but the light wasn't warm. It was empty, hollow, deceitful. Its face shifted every time she looked, priest, bishop, politician, even her own reflection. It smiled. "Welcome, Sister Mary Ann. You knew me well, didn't you?" She tried to scream, but the air had been ripped from her lungs. She wasn't in hell, not yet, but she was on the edge, and something was pulling her down. The figure's voice was like thunder inside her skull, reverberating through every fiber of her being. "I've waited a long time for this moment, Sister Mary Ann. You thought you knew me. You thought you understood." Mary Ann's heart pounded in her chest. She couldn't breathe. The very air around her seemed to press against her, suffocating her soul. She tried to speak, but the words failed her. Her body was frozen, held captive by the gaze of this beautiful, monstrous figure. It laughed, a sound that echoed through eternity, reverberating in her bones. "You've served the faith, you've prayed and fasted, but you never truly saw." The figure's smile twisted, a cruel mockery of kindness. "You wore the habit, you wore the cross, but you never understood what it meant." Mary Ann's mind raced. She had spent her whole life serving the church, helping others, praying for salvation, for herself and for others. She had given up everything, committed her life to God's service, but now everything felt like a lie. The darkness around her pulsed with a malevolent force, suffocating her with every passing second. Her thoughts spiraled as she recalled the many sermons, the countless prayers, the Bible passages she had memorized, all those years spent preaching the gospel, all those moments she had believed herself to be righteous, but now it seemed so shallow, empty. "You spoke the words, sister. You repeated them. But did you ever truly listen?" The voice echoed, sending a wave of dread through her. "Did you ever let them change you?" Mary Ann's knees buckled, and she collapsed to the cold, unyielding ground. Her soul felt naked, exposed to the judgment of this being, this force, this presence that seemed to know every secret she had hidden from herself. "I see all, sister, every thought, every prayer, every sin, every lie you told yourself, every justification you made, every moment you closed your eyes to the truth." Mary Ann tried to close her eyes, but the darkness didn't relent. It pressed harder, tighter, colder. She couldn't escape. The figure's face shifted once more. This time, it took on the face of someone she knew intimately, someone she had trusted, Jesus. The face of her Savior, the one she had followed her entire life, now loomed above her with eyes filled not with love, but with a deep sorrow. Sorrow she had never imagined in her wildest nightmares. And the voice that followed pierced her like a sword through her heart. "You failed me, sister. You never saw the truth in my message." The words were not angry, but filled with profound sadness, as though the figure before her had been waiting for this very moment for centuries. "I never asked for your perfection. I asked for your heart." And then everything stopped. Mary Ann's breath caught in her throat as time seemed to stretch into infinity. The world around her, once dark and suffocating, suddenly faded. The oppressive weight lifted, but it left an emptiness in its wake, as if a void had consumed the very essence of her being. She felt herself drifting, weightless, like a leaf caught in the wind, until she was no longer in the place she had known. No longer trapped in the suffocating void of shadow, she found herself in a field of blinding light. The warmth of the sun on her skin was soothing, gentle, almost unreal, and standing there before her, amidst the radiant glow, was the figure again, but this time it was different. It was not monstrous, It was not angry. It was Jesus, but not in the way she had seen him in paintings or imagined him in her prayers. This was a version of Christ that transcended the human image. This was a figure of infinite compassion, whose eyes glowed with a light so pure it cut through every darkness she had ever known. You are not alone, Sister Marianne. Her heart fluttered in her chest as she gazed at him. Tears, pure and heavy, began to fall from her eyes as she whispered the only thing she could manage. Why? Why did you let me go through all that? Why did I have to see all that horror? Jesus' voice was gentle, like a loving father speaking to his child. It was never about the pain, sister. It was about understanding. His eyes pierced her soul. You needed to see, not with your eyes, but with your spirit. You needed to understand that faith is not about blind devotion. It's about trust, trust in the unseen, the unknown, and most of all, trust in my love. Marianne trembled. Her mind, still reeling from the horrors she had faced, struggled to grasp what he was saying. Could this really be the same Savior she had followed for so long? Could this loving figure truly understand the depth of the agony she had just endured? I I thought I understood your love, but I was wrong. Her voice cracked as the truth hit her. She had been following a version of God created in her own image, not in his. It is not enough to merely go through the motions, Marianne. His voice was like a soft breeze, but it carried the weight of 1,000 truths. You must live with a heart that is open, a heart that is willing to embrace the darkness and the light, the joy and the suffering. She felt a wave of peace wash over her, like the tide gently pulling away the wreckage of a storm. For the first time, she understood. She wasn't meant to be perfect. She wasn't meant to be immune to suffering or doubt. What mattered was how she responded, how she embraced the pain, the doubt, and the unknown, knowing that Christ's love was a constant, unshakable foundation beneath it all. But, she began, feeling as though the ground beneath her was still trembling with the weight of the vision. I saw hell. I saw the darkness. It felt so real, so endless. Will I go there? Will anyone I love go there? Jesus stepped forward, placing a hand gently on her shoulder, the warmth of his touch reaching deep into her soul. No, Sister Marianne, you will not go there. His gaze softened. That place you saw was not the final destination. It is a place where souls are lost, yes, but it is also a place where redemption can happen. It is a place where people, like you, can learn and change, but only if they open their hearts to love, not just my love, but the love that lives in all people, in all of creation. Marianne's heart swelled with emotion, her chest tightening with the enormity of what he was telling her. Redemption was possible, even after everything she had seen, after all the failures, the doubts, the darkness. There was still hope. What do I do now? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. You live, sister. You live with the understanding that your purpose is to love, not just with words, but with your very life. Jesus' voice was firm, resolute. You are not alone, and you are not abandoned. Remember that, always. In the blink of an eye, everything changed again. The light that had bathed her faded, and the peace that had enveloped her was replaced with a sharp, jagged reality. Marianne felt herself falling once more, as if the ground beneath her had opened up and swallowed her whole. Her body shot upright in an instant, her heart racing. The sterile smell of the hospital room hit her like a slap, the beeping of the machines echoing in her ears. She was back, back in the world of the living. She gasped for air, her lungs fighting to breathe as if they had forgotten what oxygen felt like. Her body trembled violently, and her mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Had it all been a dream? A vision? But then she remembered the message, the truth, the love, the understanding that she was not meant to simply serve, to merely live out her days in devotion and ritual. No, she was meant to live with a heart of love, unafraid to face both the light and the darkness, the beauty and the pain. And for the first time in her life, Mary Ann knew, truly knew, what it meant to be free.